Peace, and welcome to another episode of the Quranic Remedies, where we spend about 15 minutes exploring a page from the Quran together and seeing how we can apply the verses to our lives. And hopefully, with God's permission, it helps us heal our brain, body, mind, and soul. So today we'll be reading from chapter 4, The Women, from verses 95 to 101. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. I seek refuge to God from the accursed devil. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. In the name of God, the gracious, the merciful. لا يستوي القاعدون من المؤمنين غير أولي الضرر والمجاهدون في سبيل الله بأموالهم وأنفسهم. فضل الله المجاهدين بأموالهم وأنفسهم على القاعدين درجة وكلا وعد الله الحسنى وفضل الله المجاهدين على القاعدين أجرا عظيما. Not equal are the inactive among the believers, except the disabled, and the strivers in the cause of God with their possessions and their persons. God prefers the strivers with their possessions and their persons above the inactive by a degree, but God has promised goodness to both. Yet God favors the strivers over the inactive with a great reward. درجات منهم ومغفرة ورحمة وكان الله غفورا رحيما. Degrees from him and forgiveness and mercy. God is forgiving and merciful. إن الذين توفاهم الملائكة ظالمي أنفسهم قالوا فيما كنتم قالوا كنا مستضعفين في الأرض قالوا ألم تكن أرض الله واسعة فتهاجروا فيها فأولئك مأواهم جهنم وساءت مصيرا. While the angels are removing the souls of those who have wronged themselves, they will say, what was the matter with you? They will say, we were oppressed in the land. They will say, was God's earth not vast enough for you to immigrate in it? Their refuge is hell, what a wretched retreat. إلا المستضعفين من الرجال والنساء والولدان لا يستطيعون حيلة ولا يهتدون سبيلا. Except for the weak among men and women and children who have no means to act and no means to find a way out. فأولئك عسى الله أن يعفو عنهم وكان الله عفوا غفورا. These God may well pardon them. God is pardoning and forgiving. ومن يهاجر في سبيل الله يجد في الأرض مراغما كثيرا وسعة ومن يخرج من بيته مهاجرا إلى الله ورسوله ثم يدركه الموت فقد وقع أجره على الله وكان الله غفورا رحيما. Anyone who immigrates for the sake of God will find on earth many places of refuge and plenitude. Anyone who leaves his home immigrating to God and his messenger and then is overtaken by death, his compensation falls on God. God is forgiver, most merciful. وإذا ضربتم في الأرض فليس عليكم جناح أن تقصروا من الصلاة إن خفتم أن يفتنكم الذين كفروا إن الكافرين كانوا لكم عدوا مبينا. When you travel in the land, there is no blame on you for shortening the prayers if you fear that these disbelievers may harm you. The disbelievers are your manifest enemies. صدق الله العظيم. God the Great said the truth. The verses start off with something that is amazing. The thing that we clearly see at the beginning is that God is measuring everything. When it comes down to even striving, God is preferring those that are striving with their money and their bodies over those that are not capable of striving or are choosing not to strive. There is an exception to people who do not have the option to strive, i.e. the disabled. So God is saying the disabled, showing that they have a disability, that they are not capable of actually producing things in the physical sense. We can understand this verse to be along the other verses in regards to fighting and people going throughout the land in the name of God and striving in the name of God, which does include fighting. Now, God is saying that there are people where it is permissible for them to stay behind. Even though in a war, you shouldn't be staying behind. But there are people where they are not disabled, yet they are not going to be beneficial on the battlefield. Either young, really young or not capable, or people who are weak in general, or individuals that are at an old age and they're also needed in other places. If somebody is capable of fighting at that point, it is actually a sin when he's not going out for a war if the war is required for him to be there, or for him to be there for the war. These individuals, unfortunately, in another chapter, God tells us that these people technically left the religion. Because when it came down to the concepts of loyalty and they had no excuse, they chose to stay behind just purely for their materialistic gains or them worrying about things that are completely out of control. And God tells the prophet, do not worry about those people, nor to you visit such people, and they are technically hypocrites in the eyes of God. But God here is talking about the people where he is promising goodness. They're both getting promised goodness. But you could see the fairness in how God is showing that everything is measured. Everything when it comes down to what you're doing, the effort that you're putting out, the amount of work that you're thinking or that you're doing for God, the amount that you're even thinking about God, the loyalty that you're showing, the remembrance that you're committing to, all the effort that you're putting, the net effort that you're putting is all being accounted. And now notice how God states that there's only 1 degree between those that are left behind, while those are the ones striving in the name of God. But yet in the next verse, God says degrees from him and forgiveness and mercy. God is forgiving and merciful. So what we could understand is that when it comes down to judgment, there's things where they have variance in degree. So one individual that is striving with his money and wealth compared to somebody that had to be from the people who sat behind, the person automatically gets 1 degree for being striving, a degree over the other individual. But even because he is a person who is striving in the way of God, he's getting more degrees in other things that is also putting him above the other people who are not striving. Now, you need to find ways for you to strive for your Lord. In this day and age, unfortunately, because of how difficult it is for you to actually be capable of accomplishing things that people used to be able to accomplish before, but today, because of a lot of bureaucracy and a lot of control over what you can and what you can't do, or what you can think and what you can't think, you find yourself oftenly having to explain yourself to a lot of security agencies and a lot of other individuals that need to know why you're doing what you want to do. Not in regards to warfare, but even when it comes down to humanitarian aid. There are many times where I was heavily questioned and investigated purely by making donation drives and giving these money to the people who are required. Unfortunately, because there's a lot of red tape when it comes down to striving in the way of God, you're going to find yourself being questioned, and you find yourself in positions where you do have to rely on your Lord, and you have to keep doing what you're doing so that you can find the forgiveness, the mercy that God has been promising you, along with the degrees. Now, there is something that we have to keep in mind. Just because you are doing more than the person next to you, it does not give you the right to look down upon them, because God is telling you right here that he has promised them goodness. They are your brothers in religion. They are your brothers in ways that you might not perceive it. And they are assisting you in ways that you might not perceive it. But it never makes you or never gives you the right to think that you are now a better person than that individual. There are things that you are doing where you are more worthy for the community, but you are still unequal to the man next to you in regards to him being a human being and him being a believer. And as God showed us earlier, that if someone harms a believer on accident or on purpose and even goes as far as killing them, then those individuals have incurred a lot of wrath. Now, we can understand these verses in ways where it's not as severe as what God is showing us in his example, but putting somebody down and trying to kill his spirit is something that is going to be used against you, and you might find yourself, if it's worthy enough, to find the anger of God upon you. Now, God is now telling us something where I personally understand that there are people where when they die, they have been oppressing themselves in their mentality, in the way that they're living, in the way that they're doing. Maybe they were also seeing God in a way that was not permissible, i.e. they think that their life is so bad, so they technically start to blame God. And in these verses, the one that we're reading right now, the people where they are wronging themselves and the angels are coming to them, I also believe that this verse is talking about suicide, where there are people, they are so depressed and low in their life that they opt to take away the life that God has given them in injustice, wronging themselves, oppressing themselves. And those people, they don't really much have ground to stand on, because God is telling you the fix to a lot of people when it comes down to reasons why they killed themselves out of oppression. It is because they have not tried to immigrate. And God obviously crevices this with a different verse, the verse following it, that there are people where they did not have the opportunity to immigrate. This is something that we again see presently in this world, where we need these visas and these passports for us to be able to move from a place to place, and yet you're not even welcomed in that place for a length of time. You kind of have to go back to where you came from, and there's a lot of, again, red tape and political and bureaucracy for you to be able to immigrate in the land and to travel around the land. This is coming from a person who has a Western passport, but imagine somebody from Afghanistan or somebody from Syria and other countries where their passport are deemed very weak and they are not capable of traveling wherever they want in the land. So those individuals, they truly don't have a way. They don't have a way to act. And if they end up dying, being in a very difficult state, or if they kill themselves, we can see that maybe God has the capability, or God has the capability, if he wishes, to forgive these individuals, and they find themselves in goodness in the hereafter. Because truly it is about what is in your heart. There are many individuals that if they were given $1 million, they would make this world a better place. And then there's others that have the $1 million and they use that money to make this place a terrible place. But these individuals that were willing to work for God in a positive light, and they find themselves not having that $1 million, but even worse, they find themselves contained in where they are, and the people around them are not understanding the goodness that is within them. So they get bullied and they get harassed and they get shown in a bad light constantly, that these individuals are outside of what's deemed permissible in society, only because they're focused on God and trying to make this place a better place for somebody else. Those individuals, because they're outcasted, they are driven to certain psychological issues, and they end up having certain problems, mental health problems, only due to this pressure that they're under. God is telling you that it's a very good idea for you to immigrate. So this, we can also see that this is happening in the war that is currently ongoing in the Middle East, where God is saying that it's not wrong of those individuals in Palestine to immigrate, and to try to make them feel bad that they immigrating and giving up their lands. Is the fact is that they are clearly being oppressed. So why would you put yourself in a position where you're not capable of A, changing the situation, i.e. defeating the Zionists in this current time, or B, finding a way so that you could serve your God in a better sense, especially when God is saying that his land is vast. So if you were oppressed and your things were stolen, or people around you are causing you a lot of depression, then immigrate. Look and you will find. And those individuals that leave behind their life and start to immigrate because they want to be loyal to what God has said, God will support them. He will show them many places in the earth and many vast bounties that they are capable of receiving. And God will also nourish them in places in ways that they themselves have not considered. Leaving your countries and leaving your families and leaving certain businesses behind and going to a place where you believe that you're going to get closer to God, the fact that you're willing to make these sacrifices because you know God told you so, speaks on your behalf. And that is you going out for God and his messenger because you believed what God and his messenger was telling you. Now, a lot of individuals, unfortunately, in this day and age, when they immigrate, it is not for God. It is for them to find a better job, or to get a certain passport, or to find a certain life for their family, because they were not being persecuted where they were, nor were they striving with God where they were. Those individuals, these verses don't really apply to them, because in these verses are those that are being oppressed, and then they leave, or they leave what they have even though they're not oppressed, so that they could go make the world a better place based on what God has told them in the blessed Quran. So yes, there's individuals that have a good life and they are valuable people in the community and they have their positions in their family, yet they would leave that behind just to go on the battlefield, knowing very well that they could die. And God states that it's not even them being killed. If you immigrated and with the intention that you want to get closer to God and serve your Lord, and you're making the sacrifices of leaving what you have and leaving people behind, and you die, then God has already given you the reward. Your compensation is already with God. So the second you left your home in the way that you left, because of the persecution that you were under, or for you to make this world a better place in regards to what God has given you, you're going to find yourself in a very, very honorable position on the day of judgment, because it's not an easy thing to sacrifice. Now, there is this verse where a lot of people, unfortunately, in this day and age, take it out of context. God is telling us that it's permissible for us to shorten our prayers. So now we know that prayers have a time limit or a duration, and God's saying that there is no blame for you to shorten your prayer if you are traveling, only if you fear only if you fear that the disbelievers are going to cause you a problem or to test you or even fight you. And God is saying that they are clear enemies. So there is no other time where it's permissible for you to shorten your prayers. Even if you're in a boat or a car or a plane, or you are trying to achieve something and it's not possible for you to stand up and perform a prayer, God states that there is no blame for you to do it while walking or while you're seated or traveling, because certain places like the car or the boat or the plane, we're not capable to have many people in a plane to just stand up and start to pray and prostrate at certain places. There are times where individuals have taken the opportunity to do so, and more power to them. But you still have to pray. It's not something that you could put to the side. And now we have a sect where they like to combine prayers and say that because I'm traveling, I'm capable of combining prayers or delaying prayers and doing whatever they want for their prayers, thinking that these are just chores that they need to check off, and they can maybe pray 5 times in a matter of half an hour and consider that as 5 different prayers for 5 different times during the day, which is against basic logic. But God has never given us the permission to shorten our prayers due to travel. He gave us the permission to shorten our prayer only if we are being tested by the disbelievers, or we fear being tested by the disbelievers. These are things that are incredibly clear in the Quran, and anyone who wants to show us, make things permissible which God has not made permissible, then on the day of judgment, you need to provide your proof on how God told you that this is how it's going to be done. Relying on the word of man is not going to take you very far, because unfortunately, in these verses that we read, one thing that is incredibly important is for you to strive with your body and mind. The same community that is telling you that you can shorten your prayers whenever you are traveling is the same community that is no longer striving with their body and mind. Rather, you find them very concentrated on the worldly life. And this is what happens when you start to stop applying the verses of God and you start to find your comfort in other things. You start to oppress yourself thinking that you're doing well until the world around you starts to crumble because you haven't been doing your part against the devil and his allies. For us to truly defeat the devil and his allies, we always are in a form of war. The war will never stop, as God states that disbelievers are clear enemies, and the devil is a clear enemy, and the enemy is not going to stop fighting you. These individuals are not going to stop, and some of them are extremely relentless. Does not mean that it needs to be a war of attrition between your enemies, but rather sometimes it could be an ideological fight, could be a spiritual fight, and it could be a means fights through propaganda and other techniques and other things that people usually do so that they would take away from what God has given us, and so that they would establish themselves in the earth instead of you. And with that said, I really hope you guys are enjoying these. All praise to the Lord of the worlds, and peace be upon you.